Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is. And welcome back. I hope that your week was absolutely outstanding and you are as excited to be here as I am because today it is Friday. We made it through another very busy week, but we're not done yet. We got a bunch of business to attend to today, and Gavin Newsey's having a tough time out there. He's got two cases that he's struggling on that we'll talk about. We're going back to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We saw earlier in the week that they brought out that varsity starting quarterback or whatever it was for the high school team in California, and he went and had oral arguments and didn't do so hot because of, well, Gavin's position. Probably not his fault. He's working for Gouveia. So what happened is they went in front of the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit came back down and issued this order and this ruling saying Gavin essentially loses. This is the National Guard case. And the National Guard case, of course, Gavin said, he came out. Remember, he lectured everybody. I'm going to be in charge of the National Guard by noon tomorrow. How long ago was that? Like a week ago? Gavin? Pathetic. All right, so that's all they do is just talk. They don't know anything what they're talking about. I don't know, whatever. He just posts another video with his wife. Like, hey. Anyways, so we got that. Then we'll talk about what happened here because the Supreme Court also came back down and said that Gavin loses the EPA case as well. So the fuel companies or car companies were saying, hey, how about you don't regulate us because you hate gasoline or oil or whatever your stupid position is? How about you don't regulate us and harass us and force us to comply with ridiculous standards in California? And they sued, and the lawmakers were kicked out many times over. And then, of course, it went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found in their favor. Gavin loses again. So we'll talk about it. Then we got this Khalil update. This dude right here, who we've talked a little bit about here, he's here on a visa, was just about to get lawful permanent resident or was lawful permanent or something. We'll figure out what the status is. But he was detained because part of that lawful status, according to the State Department and their allegations, was fraudulent, that the dude was lying when he was here to fill out his forms to get whatever status he claims he has, which is not as solid as he thinks. So what happened is, though, is the judge ordered him out, released from jail by the close of business as of today. We'll see if Trump seeks an appeal or anything, but this happened today, so we don't have a lot of documents on it. It was all in open court. So we'll talk about that and see what is happening in that case. Then Trump stopped, and so he spoke quite a bit today. So we'll listen to this, see what he said on his way out for the weekend, before maybe the final weekend, before bombing happens in the Middle East. We'll see. So that's coming up. Then we'll talk about this post from the president. Trump came out and said it's time to have a special prosecutor appointed to investigate what happened in 2020, something we've been screaming ever since, well, 2020. And that, of course, is causing a lot of ruckus out there. But we also have people like Molly Hemingway who are chronicling how this all will work. But in addition to that, we've got Abe Amadei from Arizona, who's a congressman here, who is saying that he sent a letter over to Pam Bondi saying that we should check Arizona too. In fact, even 2024. So we shouldn't be limiting this only to 2020, or Carrie Lake might want to say, the same thing happened in 2022. And it was the same MO where they had the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the governor all colluding with each other, just like we saw in Michigan and Colorado, just, like the Gals Pal Squad over there, trying to stop Trump no matter what. So all that, we got some other clips, and I think we're even going to get to our favorite senator, Grassley, later today. All right, so a bunch of good stuff coming up because he was out on the floor talking about the whistleblowers and all the things. And so it's going to be a beautiful stream, my friends. Thank you for joining us. Happy Friday. I hope you accomplished every single thing you set your mind to. And if you didn't, I hope you're close. Now, we had a great members only stream this morning. We really appreciate our membos. We have a ton of fun with our membos. We did a full stream this morning, talked about a lot of great stuff, including this idea that MAGA is being manipulated by Russian and Iranian bots. There was this whole organization, so-called nonpartisan, and has no stake in the game at all. They came out and said that a bunch of fringe influencers are responsible for duping all of us because apparently we're so dumb. We need some other agencies to tell us what information is true and what's not. Anyways, we had a fun talk about that this morning, and we appreciate our members who support us. Thank you for doing that. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you don't want to support on the YouTube or the other platforms, that's a separate standalone entity, or you can click join on YouTube, and we'll see you on the next Membos stream. And of course, stick around for the after party because we'll be doing that today. It's Friday, baby. Heck yeah. All right, so now, without any further ado, the tubes are now warm. Let's get to it. Gavin Newsom having a tough time out there being a governor and a man. He now loses again in the Ninth Circuit. And this was the one case about the National Guard where he came out and said, I'll be in charge tomorrow by noon. And then, of course, he was stayed immediately by the Court of Appeals. But then we saw that this went to oral arguments, and then we had a little bit of an interesting debate back and forth with the very young man from California and the other dude from the DOJ. And the judges in the Ninth Circuit didn't seem like they were buying the oral arguments at all, and the arguments that Gavin was arguing, saying that they had to essentially go through his office predominantly, that this was not a rebellion, and that Trump was not in compliance with the statutes, saying that that means Gavin is back in control. Well, now it is official. Judge Breyer, the judge who issued the terrible order in the first case, who got stayed immediately. Remember, he's like, Gavin, you're in control. Gavin's like, yeah, tomorrow. No, you got stayed because that judge, Breyer, who is the brother of a Supreme Court justice who's no longer with us, is now the person who is getting stayed and stayed indefinitely now, pending the course of this appeal, because his decision was so terrible. But he's going to come back and try to keep this case. We have our friend Margot Cleveland, who is reporting on this over on X. She listened to the hearing today because the Court of Appeals kicked this back down to him, and then he's going to say, well, what do I do with it? So let's piece together what is ultimately happening. This came down from the judges. We got to see them in oral arguments earlier this week. Mark J. Bennett, Eric Miller, Jennifer Sung, the circuit judges who were seated there, mostly mute. They write, all right, here's the opinion of the court per curiam, saying, you know, in the U.S. Code, Congress passed a law that said the President of the United States is authorized to call in the National Guard. And that's what happened. In fact, the president did that and ordered 4,000 people into service for 60 days. So then Gavin and the rest of the libs said, whoa, what are you doing? You're trying to enforce federal immigration law against illegal and alien invaders on our streets who are waving Mexican flags around, endorsed by the president of the Senate of Mexico, who thinks that the geographic southwest of the United States belongs to them. Also endorsed by Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, who says that if we dare tax their remittances, that they're going to mobilize against us and do what? Yeah, all of them. So our own politicians, who may have 3 million illegal aliens in LA alone, who knows, who are their constituents, who probably are responsible for 5 seats in California, maybe more than that, in Congress, and billions of dollars in federal government grift. They sued. They said, we don't want any of that to end. So they applied for a TRO. And then the lower level judge, Breyer's bro, came out and said, the district court said that there was no evidence at the hearing that the National Guard were engaged in any other activities than what was articulated. So the judge is saying, okay, we're going to cabinet to this kind of appeal. So what happened is after the judge gave it back to Gavin, Trump immediately appealed, filed an emergency motion to stay this pending appeal. And the court, the Ninth Circuit, issued the stay. Remember, that was the time Gavin came out. He's like, I'll have it tomorrow. He's like, oh, no, you didn't even last 12 hours, idiot. So we now grant the stay, right? Trump asked for an extension of that administrative stay. They say, hold on. So it's like, administratively, if you order us to give back the National Guard like tomorrow, it's going to cause a bunch of problems. Like they're all going to have to pack up and start leaving and then whatever. So we're not going to do that. So 3 days, just quick stay. Let us consider it a little bit more. Emergency oral arguments. We have them. We get the presentation. They come out now with the final order pending the rest of the appeal, which will take a lot longer to brief in full and maybe have more oral arguments on the merits of the case because Gavin brought 3 claims, and we were just kind of talking about the preliminary injunction at the moment. Now, meaning Breyer loses, and he's going to lose this entire time. So he's going to scramble around to keep this case, and he's going to probably do that, just like Boasberg did, just like Zenas did. They get scolded by the Supreme Court of the United States. Hey, Boasberg, you have no jurisdiction over this case at all. Why are you keeping it? Because they're laughing at John Roberts. John, they are. They don't care. They're snubbing you, man. All right, we now grant the stay. Trump wins. Gavin loses. Again. Says Trump has made the required strong showing that they're going to win this thing. Now, we disagree with their primary argument from Trump that Trump's decision to federalize members is completely insulated from judicial review. And we point this out a lot here, and this is just another example of this, where if you tell a court, like, you can't do this, like 99 out of 100 times they're going to say, oh, yes, we can. Because it's just how human nature works and how power works. So this idea of like a permanent limited judiciary or a permanent limited Congress, right? Everybody just wants a little bit more for them. And the judges too. They're not going to come out and say, you're right, we have no power over this. Actually, we should reverse Marbury versus Madison because we made that illegal too. Illegally. Like never, right? Because it's going to undermine their own institution. Same reason we have people who come in and say that they're just going to, like, eliminate the FBI or minimize it, and then they don't. They're like, actually, you know what we need here? Bigger FBI. You go, why is that? Yeah. So it happens constantly. So that argument from Trump saying that you can't look at this at all, they're like, no, we're looking. Now, nonetheless, the Court of Appeal says you still win. Under longstanding precedent interpreting this statute, our review of the decision must be highly deferential. We don't have to avoid looking at it, but we do got to give you kind of the benefit of the doubt on a lot of this. Now, affording the president that defense, we conclude that it is likely that Trump lawfully, read it and weep, Gavin, President Trump lawfully exercised his statutory authority which authorizes federalization of the National Guard when the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. So good. It's right. It's true. And all of these protests, like, they're not saying this, but this is the truth of it. Trump is not able to execute the laws when you have flash mobs of citizens or not. I don't care if they're illegal or citizens, whatever it is. They're standing in the way, obstructing federal agents. We had like 1,500, 1,600 J6ers rounded up for obstructing something when they were invited into the building. Not all of them, but many were. Now, additionally, the Secretary of Defense transmittal of the order, as you see here, is also authorized under the law. And it satisfied the procedural requirement. Okay, it went through Gavin's office. That's enough. And even if there was a procedural violation, the Ninth Circuit says, that would not justify the scope of the relief here provided by maniac Breyer. Our conclusion that it is likely that the president's orders federalizing the California National Guard also solves the 10th Amendment claims because they say the 10th Amendment claims is based on the statutory claim. And so we find in Trump's favor and we grant the motion for a stay pending appeal. Oh no, California. You're going to have a little semblance of law and order, and the National Guard can come in here and repel the illegal invaders out of our country. Oh no. So hard for you, I know. On June 6th, here's the background. A group of protesters tried to prevent ICE from operating in LA by throwing objects at ICE vehicles. Yeah, we were here, we saw it. Later that evening, protesters gathered at ICE and buildings downtown, and they pinned down federal officers. This is the real J6, to be clear. The real J6 is happening right now in California. A sustained, weaponized operation against federal officials. Not a 4-hour protest over a stolen election, which was clearly stolen, as we're learning, in multiple ways. The protesters used concrete chunks, bottles of liquid, including flaming liquids, and other objects at the officers. They used large rolling commercial dumpsters. This is the Ninth Circuit writing. LA Police Department arrived on scene about an hour after being called by officers. The protesters eventually dispersed at law enforcement direction, but the federal building had been heavily vandalized. The next day on J7, as the two-day assault occurred, protesters continued to interfere with federal enforcement operations, continuing to damage federal properties. Didn't happen on J6, allegedly. In a confrontation that lasted over 7 hours, J6 was about 4. This was on day 2. J6 was about 1. They were back in the building that same night. No problems the following day. And a lot of this was instigated by guys like Ray Epps. And on J6, January, the protesters blocked traffic. They used shopping carts. They barricaded the street. CBP officers were boxed in. They were throwing mortar-style fireworks at everybody. Other protesters engaged in dangerous behavior, like throwing rocks from bridges, including a Molotov cocktail at deputies. They were burning a vehicle. They were vandalizing property. One ERO officer was trapped in her law enforcement vehicle while protesters surrounded it, and she didn't shoot anybody in the neck. Violently pounded and shook it and threw stones at it. One officer suffered a shattered wrist caused by a thrown object. They also damaged the perimeter fence of the federal building. Now, in response, Trump came out and he said, all right, enough of this crap. On J7, he called into federal service 2,000 National Guard. He said, all right, these invaders must go. Later that evening, Hegseth came out, issued something. Now, protests against federal officers continued into the following days. For example, during the night of June 8th, protesters, now we're on J day +2 +8. Now we're on June 8th now. 2 full days, 48 hours of an assault by these maniacs. Protests in downtown LA set off commercial-grade fireworks towards federal officers. They threw objects at passing law enforcement vehicles. They lit fires in dumpsters, vandalized dozens of buildings with graffiti, including the courthouse, including the federal courthouse. On June 9th, the assault continues. A crowd of 1,000 protesters gathered near a federal building. And that means that federal building cannot operate, okay? The whole building is shut down. What are you going to do? Come in and out of the gates when there's 1,000 people there? You can't come in and out of the gates. You can't conduct your ICE operations there. That's the point. It's 1,000 protesters. On day 3 of this, J6 started 3 days ago. One protester drove by the building, fired paintballs, projectiles at officers, hitting at least one in the head and the neck. At another federal building, protesters attacked a federal van carrying multiple non-citizens and officers, rocking the vehicle and smashing its windows. Let our illegals go, they said. Let them out. Release them into the country. What if somebody did that when the FBI lunatics came in and kicked in one of the J6ers' doors? And Americans stood up and stopped that from happening? What would they have done? They would have shot everybody in the crowd and called it a domestic terrorist attack. Says, and then said, well, we couldn't, we couldn't figure out what to do about it because of sloped roofs or something like that, right? Because they're so incompetent when they need to be. The building had to be closed for most of the day. Remained closed the next day, too. Congress was back open on January 6th. Remember, they came that same night. Disrupting the operations of many federal agencies working in the building. On June 9th, in response to these events, the secretary issued a second memo calling another 2,000 in. That day, plaintiffs sued. So Gouveia comes, how dare you kick illegals out? Said, this is ridiculous. This is outside of the law, ultra virus. This is against the 10th Amendment, which reserves rights to the states. And it's an administrative claim that allows us to use this catch-all provision and sue for anything else that the law doesn't provide for elsewhere. It's like a kind of an umbrella protection provision. Now, the complaint seeks relief. Court of Appeals writes. So then on June 10th, Gavin came out and he said, we're going to suffer immediate harm. Judge Breyer, help us. There's a high risk of substantial unrest and that the National Guard are spreading fear. And they're the ones who are actually destabilizing the country and the community. And that we don't need them. And that if you use us as National Guard for this, then we can't stop drug trafficking. It's like, hello, what do you think a lot of this is based around? Trafficking across our border, including drugs and kids, which you forget about. Help fight forest fires, Gavin, which they've done such a good job on having their some of most beautiful cities burnt to the ground thanks to the mayor and Gouveia. Defendants opposed the motion. Trump said, ridiculous, okay? We're going to federalize this National Guard. And in fact, you can't even stop us. So leave us alone. It's non-justiciable. The judge can't even review it. Well, the judge said, oh, yes, I can. I'm the president now. He said that, well, before we get into it, we do agree that the president could operate, right? Everybody agrees like the president could do it, but Trump just didn't do it right. Parties agreed. Does he have full authority under either one of these? I'm sorry. So it's not, they're not defaulting to that. They're just saying, is it yes or no for that provision or for this provision? Yes for that. Yes for this. The district court then determined from Breyer that Gavin was going to win. They said, first of all, this is outside the law. The conditions that Trump invoked to federalize this was not satisfied, right? In other words, this is not a rebellion. We saw that language. The judge said like rebellion has to be, or if Claudia Sheinbaum, well, actually, if she did say that, so that wouldn't work. Or if the president of the Senate would say so, oh, he did say that, so that's not going to work. So it'd be like if somebody, like in Venezuela, like Maduro, oh, wait, he didn't, oh, he said something like that too. So I don't have any good examples for you, but the judge made a definition of rebellion that you couldn't meet, even though we looked it up like 5 times in 5 different dictionaries, Oxford, Merriam-Webster's, Black's Law, all of them said rebellion. It's obstructing or rejecting the lawful authority of the sovereign government. That's all. It's not complicated. That's clearly what's happening. And the judge is articulating that for us. But Breyer was like, no, they're just peaceful people and they just want to improve their lives in pupusas. And because the federalization order was not issued through the governor, right? He said, well, you didn't send it like via email and I didn't get CC'd on this. It's too bad. Now, based on the conclusion that Trump acted without authority, the lower level maniac judge also concluded that Gouveia was going to win on the 10th Amendment claim too. Then he didn't want to act on posse comitatus, right? He says, I'm going to decline to talk about that, which is using the military to do basically law enforcement on the streets. Can't do that unless there's certain exceptions. But they say there's no evidence here that they were engaged in any other activities. So we don't even need to get into that because they were only doing federal building stuff. Now, they did not yet contend that the National Guard members have participated in any arrest in violation of posse comitatus. And so that really hasn't come up. But then Breyer says that the lower level judge, that Gavin did suffer irreparable injury by having the National Guard come in here and stop illegal invaders from wrecking federal buildings. They suffered. And said that while Trump has no doubt in protecting federal agents, he didn't have the authority here. He said the National Guard is just making things worse. And they're going to deprive the state of its own people in the National Guard. Amazing. And then stayed its order until June 13th. Gavin came out and said, I'll be in charge tomorrow. Then was reversed immediately. Now, Trump immediately filed a notice of appeal and was successful. We held oral arguments. We talked about it earlier this week. Now, ordinarily, we lack jurisdiction, but we're going to hold on to it using these other provisions of the law. And this is essentially a preliminary injunction because of the effect of the order from the lower level judge. Not a TRO, it's a preliminary injunction. Since it's in effect a PI, the court can hear it. We got it. Then they give us their standard of review. How are they going to analyze the lower level ruling? And they're using the traditional state factors, which we talk a lot about here. So in summation, here is how they apply the rules. Now, in determining whether Trump made a strong showing, we address only the issues that the lower level court resolved. Now, Trump argues that Breyer erred in concluding that the Gavin claim can even be filed. They also say that he made a mistake in concluding that they were going to win, saying that the federalization is not allowed. And so we're going to be talking about certain things, but not other things. Now, the first question, we talk a lot about this question, is the political question doctrine. Can you just sue if you're mad about something your government did? Can you just sue them and just say, hey, wait a minute, this is illegal, you can't do that? Normally, no. Unless you're an illegal alien, then you can sue wherever you want, and they'll just grant you anything immediately, including from the Supreme Court of the United States. So if you're an illegal alien, these rules don't apply to you. You can do whatever you want in our country. No one cares. Even the FBI will just let you go if you're trafficking kids in your floorboards. So forget about that. But In addition, if you tried to sue the government, like let's say, for example, you were very mad because your vote was diluted because of fraud, and you sued, they would say, you have no standing, idiot. This is a political question, okay? You should have voted harder. You said, what? You have no standing, right? You can't bring this lawsuit. You can't sue to challenge taxation or this regulation or whatever. Just go change the people. Just go change the elected officials and vote. That's what the elections are for, right? Unless you're an illegal alien, you can just sue and say, I'm unhappy about this rule under the APA, or you're suing Trump and you say, I'm entitled to federal grants forever because I'm USAID and I am an AIDS doctor in the sub-Sahara of Africa. You got it. But here they say, Trump says, you can't even listen to this at all. It's a political question. Gavin can't handle this. And your court can't handle this either. It's our decision. So you're done. They say, we disagree. We're going to hold on to this case. It's not a political question, and we have power. And we also can review this case. And here's Marbury versus Madison again. And Judge Alito just gave an interesting interview, I think with the Hoover Institute, just this week. And he was talking to the host about this. And the host referenced an old quote from Scalia, which was challenging Marbury versus Madison in a way, right? Asking about where did that come from? We should reanalyze where that came from. Is that in the text of the Constitution? Very interesting. Anyways, so they're relying back on Marbury versus Madison. This is obviously the seminal case that establishes judicial review. And they say, can we review? It's Marbury versus Madison. The statute says we can. Trump says we cannot. They cite these cases, but in those cases, they're different. The question here then, if we can look at it, the question is, how hard can we look at it? Do we owe the executive branch any deference? And if so, how much? Now, again, that's a question of interpretation. You have to look at the statute and say, how much does it, what does it say? How do we analyze this? They say, if we were to analyze the text alone, we might conclude that the president's determination is subject to review like certain other factual findings that are preconditions for executive action under a statute. They say, well, we could say that this is like another law where, it says Trump or the president can do this if this, this, and this. And they say, well, like those statutes, did that happen? And we can go look into those. But this is not a blank slate. They say, sorry, the history of Congress's statutory delegations and other cases strongly suggest that our review of the president's determinations is especially deferential, meaning we can't override you. Congress first delegated a lot of this to the president back in 1792, recognizing that Congress is not a good body and too slow to deliberate when you need to send in the National Guard because your country's been invaded. All of it has been in place for a while. 1795 Act contained a predicate called invasion. It said whenever the United States shall be invaded or in imminent danger of invasion, it's lawful for the president to call forth members of the militia as necessary as he may judge necessary to repel the invasion. The Supreme Court interpreted that, which arose out of Madison's decision back during the War of 1812. Jacob Mott, a New York militiaman, refused to turn up to service. He was court-martialed and fined back in 1812, and the state seized his property to satisfy the debt. Then he sought an action for replevin in state court, arguing the seizure was illegal because Madison's order that federalized the militia was invalid. The Supreme Court said, you lose. The court began by explaining the Constitution gave the calling forth power to Congress. Of course, we saw that. But Congress confided that and delegated that back over during the exigency of an invasion, right? You can't have Congress like, get everybody together and vote on this. We're being invaded. Should we schedule the vote next week? Yeah, by then they'll be in Washington, and that'll be perfect time. Great idea. So they just gave it to the president. The court recognized that the delegated power was limited, confined to actual invasion or imminent danger of invasion. And the court answered that question by saying, well, the president, he decides. Like, what does that mean? The president does. Because Congress can't decide. Courts can't decide. The president is the only person in place to handle that decision most efficiently. Now, they also note, Gavin said, that there are some differences between that case and this case, and so they spent some time distinguishing the two. But in summation, they'll say that California says that case is old. Like, so what? It's old. It's like, so what if the president has a lot of discretion? It's old. Things are different now. We're progressive now. We have 15 genders. You can't even believe it. Things have changed. And it is in some tension with more recent decisions like the AEA and some other cases. But all that said, the case does not compel us to accept Trump's position that he could federalize the National Guard based on no evidence whatsoever, right? So it's not so broad that Trump can just say, you know what? Federalized for whatever reason. And that the courts would be unable to review a decision that was obviously absurd or made in bad faith, right? Trump comes into California, or he goes into Michigan, or he goes into New York with Hochul. And he says, all right, no more Botox on faces. Anybody who has their face drooped off because they took too many Botox shots in there and then are called in front of a press conference, National Guard is going to stop the Botox injections because nobody can see if our governors had strokes or not. We don't know if they had a stroke or if it's just their face falling off. So the National Guard is going to come in here and stop that. They would say, you can't do that. That's not really an imminent threat to the country, even though we might disagree, and say that's been absurd or bad faith. And I don't know if that's the standard or not. We'll see. But in Martin, the court addressed that argument. They said, well, it's the president. It's limited. It falls within the discretion. And so there is a lot of deference. And so with all of that in mind, we consider whether the president exceeded his authority. The lower level judge says he did. But as Trump says, that law, that section, cannot be read to mean that as so long as some of the execution of powers are possible, the statute cannot be invoked. The logic of it doesn't make any sense. Now, under a highly deferential standard of review, Trump has presented facts to allow us to conclude that Trump had a colorable basis for invoking the law. Trump and the defense presented evidence, detailed above, of protesters' interference with the ability of federal officers to execute the laws. Obviously, we watched it on TV. Leading up to the president's federalization of the Guard on J7. There is an evidence that the day before, protesters threw objects at ICE. They tried that, and that the ICE agents were trying to complete law enforcement operations. They pinned them down. Several officers who were defending federal property. Many got hit with concrete chunks, bottle of liquids, and other objects. Large rolling commercial dumpsters were used as barricading rams to breach parking lot buildings. They vandalized buildings, threw objects, including Molotov cocktails, according to multiple people, all submitting declarations. And so if all of that, if we just afford some deference to the president on that, he acted within his authority. So then Gavin complains, well, you didn't go through our office. Remember, the judge was like, also, you have to go get permission from Gavin and CC him on this, even if he's in a Botox meeting. Defendants argue that they complied with the procedural requirements because the president called Newsom, said, get your act together. Hegseth sent a memo to the adjutant general in California and even put on it through the governor of California. We even titled it. Trump also says that even if they erred as a technical matter, any procedural error cannot justify the injunction because Trump is not legally required to get consent from Gavin. And so they say, Court of Appeals, Trump likely met this procedural requirement as well, because under California law, the adjutant general is the chief of staff to the governor. And the duties include issuing all orders in the name of the governor. So Gavin doesn't even write his own orders. He's got some dude to do it for him. Or it's California, so I don't want to presume that. Plaintiffs do not dispute he got the memo, relinquished command accordingly, and even forwarded it to Newsom. Everybody did everything above board. Although Gavin did not personally issue the order, the law says it goes through the governor. It doesn't go directly by the governor, Gavin. Nothing in the law prevents the state from delegating to a subordinate like the general the authority to release the control. Even if the statute contemplated strict adherence to this process, the rest of the statute provides that Trump is right. It says this law doesn't give governors any veto power over any of these decisions. And it says things like you got to be consulted about an order. It doesn't say anything like the governor be consulted about it. It's not supportive of the language in the text. You think it says that, but the law, it says it does not say that. So in any event, Even if Trump failed to comply with these procedural requirements, such failure would not justify the relief that the judge gave below. It's like just a clerical error. So what? Because it didn't get CC'd to Gavin specifically? No. In sum, Trump complied with the law, the procedural requirements, and all of the other requirements. And so from the Court of Appeals, Trump wins. Gavin says, but the public, we're going to die. The National Guard members are going to make things worse. They could be fighting forest fires, which apparently they don't, and combating drug trafficking, which is part of why ICE is there arresting people who are illegal invaders who traffic themselves, along with drugs and children, into our country, and more. And so, in conclusion, Gavin loses again. For the reasons above, we grant Trump's motion for a stay pending appeal, right? So for this, this is a solidly well-reasoned, obviously accurate decision. So the idea that this was 3-0, it looks like, per curiam. One of those is a blue judge, but doesn't look like Gavin is going to have a fair prospect of reversing this, at least anytime soon. So he loses again, and I'm sure he will come out with a new social media post about why this is actually a victory. We'll wait for that one. But we did go back down into the district level court, and we had a hearing today, right? So after that dropped late last night, we came back down to the district court, and Margot Cleveland was listening to the arguments that took place today because this Judge Breyer just got backhanded by the Court of Appeals, right? They just said, you're an idiot. You've done a terrible job. All of your relief that you granted was way overbroad. It is a rebellion. Trump was following the law through the governor is not accurate, and you're just terrible. You're not good at this. So he says, well, okay, we're going to have a hearing about this. It came back down to his court. Margot reports. Now, the hearing was supposed to start at 10, but it hasn't for whatever reason. And so she's going to go pick up some plumbing parts. Nice. I hope it was successful. Maybe some Schedule 40 PVC. Hopefully, we are big fans of PVC here. Says, okay, so this is the docket. Now, hearing is starting from Breyer, the judge. Says, okay, well, I guess we're all here today. Happy Friday. And I would imagine everyone had a late night. That's kind of how he sounds, actually. He says, let me review, because they all got the decision from the Court of Appeals. We just read it right there. He says, let me review where we are, as that informs where we're going to go. He says, the court granted the TRO, I did, right, Judge Breyer, and the Ninth Administration administratively stayed the decision immediately. Remember, we saw that. And then stayed it again pending appeal, which we just read. He says, in their order, the Ninth Circuit, they said that this is effectively a preliminary injunction. And so they've got jurisdiction over the case. And if they have jurisdiction, then the lower level court doesn't. Now, I'm a district court. My decisions are reviewed by the Ninth. And so just as you can't ignore my decisions, Breyer says, I can't ignore the Ninth. And so the issue is precisely, how do I do that? What do I do? Now, as we saw in the Court of Appeals, there wasn't a part about posse comitatus, which the Court of Appeals decision did talk about, which was making arrests, using the military as law enforcement on American streets, kind of subverting other law enforcement efforts and supplanting the police. He said, well, because the district court plaintiff argued certain points violate posse comitatus, the Ninth Circuit said that the posse comitatus issue is not before us, right? So the Supreme Court is saying we didn't hear that portion of the Court of Appeals. We didn't hear that. So he says, it's not clear to me that the Ninth Circuit stay divests this court per their decision to grant or modify posse comitatus. We just read the decision. This judge just got obliterated and stayed. So I think the district court might have the authority to modify my injunction to fit it under another provision of the law because he's a scammer. Now, he says, well, I'd like to ask for a briefing on this. Can I modify my injunction under posse comitatus? Depending on what you say, I'll decide what I want to do. And just like Hackjob, Boasberg, and the rest of them, they find ways to hold on to a case, even when the courts of appeals say no. So Newsom's attorney says, Your Honor, can I say something? And I need to talk right now. I got soccer practice starting in 6 minutes. Says, here's the question. Well, only if it has to do with posse comitatus. Well, we believe another issue is live, Your Honor, and you can still act on this case right now. Take it back from the Court of Appeals, which is the length of the federalization. The judge says, well, the TRO ends in 14 days. That's the difference. No, that's only one difference, Your Honor, respectfully. Well, now the judge says that this has been converted to a preliminary injunction, and now I don't have jurisdiction over the preliminary injunction. The Ninth Circuit does. You're asking, what is the duration of the National Guard? And I've understood it's been nationalized for 60 days, and so I'm stayed. Well, Your Honor, 60-day time limit, but with flexibility for that time to change, or at least at the discretion of the defense. And, says the DOJ, Newsom says, well, because it is renewable, we believe another issue is when it should end. We want the court to put an end date on that. He said, well, okay, well, put that in your briefing and I'll address it. Sorry to ruin your weekends. So briefing is due on Monday. Margot says, yeah, he's going to find that he still has this case because he's a Boasberg protege. And he's going to just keep the case because they're political hacks, not fair and impartial judges. But the Supreme Court and their case today also obliterated Gavi Poo. You see, this was the case that came down. Diamond Alternative Energy versus the EPA. And it's a 48-pager dropped from Judge Kavanaugh that says Gavin loses again. Now, what happened in the background here is California came out and they issued these regulations. It says if you're a disgusting gas-making car maker, your vehicles have to decrease emissions and you have to limit greenhouse gases so we can make room for more illegal aliens. And they submit standing declarations. They say California's regulations are a big problem for us if you're an automaker, saying nobody wants our cars anymore. The producers can't do anything. And this is causing actual damages to the auto companies. Now, the EPA did not challenge their standing before, and California and other states adopted these same regulations, and the EPA was defending them. California said that fuel producers can't sue. You can't sue. Sorry, it's federal decision, state decision. So if you've been injured, and we are now in charge of your product to save the planet, which is to wreck American industry, to limit consumption, and to make you feel better about the fact that they're stealing your money and livelihood right away from you in the name of saving the planet, while other countries are taking over nuclear power, solar panel power, drone technology, maybe AI technology, and more. So we've got a lot of problems here. But they said in the Supreme Court that fuel producers from these car companies do have standing. They are being injured. The fuel producers' injury, in fact, are pretty straightforward. In fact, undisputed. The fuel producers make money by, selling fuel. So decreased purchases of gasoline and other fuels are injuries, monetary injuries. Now, the California EPA and their approval is enforcing regulations saying you have to essentially reduce your consumption. The fuel producers are being injured. The car companies are being injured, and they're direct objects of this regulation. And this is a familiar circumstance where government regulation of one business may be likely to cause injuries to other businesses, including gas-powered vehicles and more. And so the EPA in California say you can't sue. Okay, we're dictators here. Only illegal aliens can sue in this country. You have no rights. Just close your business for 14 days and just deal with it. Record evidence says invalidating these regulations would mean that these businesses are not being strangled by green lunatics. And so this case does not involve other rare instances where markets can be permanently changed or to invalidate regulations. And so in some, they can sue. The evidence that some automakers are in compliance suggests that not all automakers would respond to invalidation. So this has all been reversed from Judge Kavanaugh, and it's actually a 7-2. Okay, so yep, you can sue. And it's not justifying or deciding this on the merits. It's just saying there's enough harm. They have standing. They can sue. You just can't sue if they steal an election from you. If they pass regulations to steal your monetary income, you might be able to sue. Supreme Court says you can't sue, in fact. But if you sue because they stole an election from you, you've got no standing at all, and things are moot. So Gavin having a tough time. 2 cases. He just lost there. Breyer, the judge in the Northern District of California, will do everything he can to hang on to this case. We'll keep our eye on it. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and joining as we cover this case and many more, and we'll see you back here on the next one. Now, we're not done yet, though. We've got a quick update on what's going down with Khalil, and we'll see if we got an update on this one, but here is the latest. Khalil ordered to be released. This came down today from a Biden judge. This guy is called Micah Farbiars. He's a district judge there in the New Jersey district, went to Harvard and Yale, typical. And of course, he's there presiding over this case that involves this guy, Khalil. And today there was a court hearing and he says, Trump, Rubio, no, release him right now. Federal judge on Friday ordered Khalil released from immigration detention more than 3 months after Trump locked him up. The judge, Farbiars, said that Khalil isn't a flight risk, he's not a danger, and lightly rebuked the government during the hearing today, calling it highly, highly unusual to keep him detained. The judge ordered Khalil to be released from custody at some point Friday by midnight, a step that will allow him to return to New York and be united with his wife and newborn. Oh. Khalil has a green card and helped to organize pro-Palestinian protests. But the Trump administration wanted him deported. He's not been charged with any crime, and I'm so tired of that stupid phrase. Who cares? I don't care. If you come to our country and you bring in and import problems for us, and you're deemed to be a risk for whatever reason, and you're not a citizen, that's the game. You're done. Go. That's not the standard. That we can only remove people or adjust their legal status if they've been convicted of a crime. Never was the standard, ever, until recently. But the Trump administration wants to deport him anyways, invoking a rarely used provision of immigration law that allows Secretary of States to deport any non-citizen, even a legal resident. Oh, you mean it's illegal? You're kidding. Even if the Secretary of State determines that the person's continued presence harms foreign policy. There you go. That's it. You may disagree with it. You may say that Khalil should not be deported. You may say that you do want to import other foreigners who can bring in their problems to our country and justify their basis for being here because I got a wife and got a kid here. And so now my problems are your problems. Melting pot of world problems is America. Says for the majority of the time since his arrest in Colombia, he's been held in detention in Louisiana. They say this is retaliatory. That's, yeah, very well. Could be totally. You're not a citizen. You're not entitled to be here. There is at least something to the underlying claim that there is an effort to use immigration proceedings to punish him. Well, if you're not serving America, then you should be punished by being not engaging in America. He's a New Jersey-based appointee of Joe Biden. This judge agreed that the Trump administration was likely unconstitutional and an affront to this non-citizen's First Amendment rights, since the First Amendment, our Constitution, applies to the whole world now. But the judge at the time stopped short of ordering his immediate release, noting that they'd also accused him of omitting information on his green card application, right? Fraud or lying. The Trump administration indicated they intended to continue to detain him on that basis, but he said no. The judge also said that his continued detention is a chilling effect. Yeah, I think that is true. That is true. We don't want protest in our colleges. I don't care what the issue is. The decision is the latest that have escalated to how they've escalated. Whatever the issue is, the decision is the latest setback for the Trump administration's efforts to detain and deport foreign academics who have been involved in pro-Palestinian campus activism. Yeah, and if you're an American citizen and you want to get out there and make your voice heard and exercise the First Amendment and all those things, it's great, go do it. But foreigners, you guys have to be on high alert, because if you go do this in any other country, go do this in Palestine, go do this in any other country, go to Mexico and do this. They deport you because they don't want foreign problems in there. Our Constitution, our country, our government should serve American interests, not serving foreigners who come in and try to pervert America to solve their interests and then be shifted to them and their values, because then we have their problems brought here and we're not solving them, as we can see here or really around the world. So another judge barred immigration authorities from arresting another student. Now, although the government asked the judge to pause this, can you give us 24 hours to appeal? He said no. So we'll see if this dude is released tonight. Assistant Homeland Secretary Tricia, she said from Ohio, this is another example of how out of control members of the judicial branch are. She expects a higher court to uphold our authority to detain this dude. Winning release from custody is very exciting from them. And the judge rejected their request to keep him in custody. So he'll be going out, and we'll see what he does. Probably go back out, start screaming about Israel or Gaza again, whatever. Go back to Harvard and start launching, whatever they were launching there. So we'll see what happens next. President Trump was making his way out for the weekend, and he got asked a bunch of questions on the tarmac heading over to the airport. And a lot of this has to do with Iran and this constant battle between all the various factions in the Middle East, whether it's Gaza, Iran, Israel, or anything over there, Ukraine, now Russia. There's manipulation from Russian and Iranian bots that are turning conservative commentators into foreign propaganda, all the things. So Trump got asked about some of that today. Here is what that sounded like.
All about Rwanda and the Congo. We'll be doing a peace settlement, probably coming in on Monday or Tuesday. We're going to be signing it up, and we've stopped a very vicious war. So that was an honor for me to be involved. I want to thank J.D. Vance for a great job, and also our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has done a fantastic job. So Rwanda, a long-term war with the Congo, a very bloody war. They're all bloody, but this was a really bloody one. Is going to be making peace with Congo, and they can get on to making trade deals with the United States and other places and have a much more normal form of life. We're very honored by that. As you know, we did a very great job with India and Pakistan, and we had India in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal with India. And we had Pakistan in. It looks like we're going to be making a trade deal with Pakistan. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Serbia, Kosovo, likewise, they've been fighting for years. And as you know, we brought that one to a conclusion. And now we have a couple of big ones. We have Russia, Ukraine, which is making a little bit of progress. And we have Israel, and nobody really knows what that one is all about. We're going to find out pretty soon, I guess.
The Iranian Mr. President, the Iranian foreign minister this afternoon said if the U.S. is serious about negotiations, that you would call up Israel and request that they stop their airstrikes. Will you make that request?
Well, I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing. But we're ready, willing, and able, and we've been speaking to Iran, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
What was the thought process behind 2 weeks time to?
Just a time to see whether or not people come to their senses. That's all it is.
Did the Europeans help at all in talking with the Iranians?
No, they didn't help. No. Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this one.
20 years ago, you were skeptical of a Republican administration that attacked a Middle East country on the idea of questionable intelligence of weapons of mass destruction. How is this moment different with Iran?
Well, there were no weapons of mass destruction. I never thought there were. And that was somewhat pre-nuclear. You know, there was a nuclear age, but nothing like it is today. And it looked like I'm right about the material that they've gathered already. It's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they were going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen. I was very much opposed to Iraq. I said it loud and clear, but I was a civilian, but I guess I got a lot of publicity. but I was very much opposed to the Iraq war. And I actually did say, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. But I said, if you're going to go in, keep the oil. But they didn't do that.
What intelligence do you have that Iran is building a nuclear weapon? Your intelligence community has said they have no evidence that they are at this point.
Well, then my intelligence community is wrong. Who in the intelligence community said that?
Your director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
She didn't.
She's wrong.
She didn't not really.
What intelligence?
She didn't really say that, by the way. She posted on X that if you read her full statement, you can take out a snippet on that, but there's other parts of her whole statement, and I read some of what she shared, and it does sound like she could make the argument that they were close, right? It's like they didn't have active nukes, but they were close. And so she's making that argument too. Trump obviously hasn't heard or seen that yet.
Reports of serious planes landing in Iran from China.
They say that they're there to take people out, but I can't tell you about that. I get along very well with China, get along very well with President Xi.
Pausing just to share that with you because she did post this in response to a lot of the people sharing a clip of her. She says, the dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division. America has intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months if they decide to finalize the assembly. Trump has been clear that that can't happen, and I agree. Here's my full testimony.
A serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. Iran will likely continue efforts to counter Israel and press for U.S. military withdrawal from the region by aiding, arming, and helping to reconstitute its loose consortium of like-minded terrorists and militant actors, which it refers to as its axis of resistance. Although weakened, this collection of actors still presents a wide range of threats, including to Israel's population, U.S. forces deployed in Iraq and Syria, and to U.S. and international military and commercial shipping and transit.
All right, so obviously Trump hasn't seen that correction, and the media, I think, is still missing the second half of that statement. And this is just standard practice, I think, for government people and bureaucrats in general, is to have a backup situation. Cops do this a lot too. Okay, if you're a cop and you're going to charge somebody with a DUI, you want to have multiple reasons for why you pulled that person over. Because a defense attorney, if you just pull somebody over for just speeding, and then the defense attorney says, actually, they were not speeding, then you just lost the basis for the traffic stop, right? Because there's no reason to pull that person over. So cops will come up with like 5 reasons. They'll be like, well, I was speeding, falling too close, weaving within the lane, didn't have this on, or came out and it failed to stop at the intersection, whatever. And I'll come up with like 5 reasons. So if you defeat 4 of them, then they have a backup sentence too. They have a backup charge. Same thing happens in speeches and things. You say this and you say this, check that box, said that for them, said that for them, said that for them, said that for them. Great. And then you can come back and rely on it. So I think that Trump, if he had heard that, he would not say she's wrong. I would say, actually, that's, I think he can make the argument, actually, that's not what she said at all. So here's the president continuing.
Gee, I like him. He likes me. We have a very good relationship. We'll see what happens. I can't imagine them getting involved.
The decision that you need to make on Iran, whether to strike militarily, is this the biggest decision you'll have to make as president?
Well, I can't tell you that. I have to see what happens. I can't, really say that. It depends what the decision is. But I wouldn't really be able to tell you that now. I'll tell you in about a year from now, maybe 5 years or 10 years from now. You never know about decisions. You never really know.
Sir, would you support a ceasefire while the negotiations happen?
I might, depending on the circumstances.
Would you?
It's very hard to stop. I will say this. it's very hard to stop when you look at it. Israel's doing well in terms of war, and I think you would say that Iran is doing less well. It's a little bit hard to get somebody to stop.
Sir, Liam Cosgrove was here. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz threw out an interesting idea suggesting that if you were to broker a deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda, and if you look, the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, I mean, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for the I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one, too. They won't give me a Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Would you support Iran being able to have nuclear, or would you support Iran being able to have civilian nuclear energy capabilities up to 3.76%?
You know, they're sitting on the top of one of the largest piles of oil in the world. I just don't know why they need that for civilian work. You know, it's one thing for certain countries to say, hey, I want to have a certain amount where I can go nuclear a little bit because we need it for electricity, we need it for air conditioners, etc. But when you're sitting on one of the largest oil piles anywhere in the world, it's a little bit hard to see why you need that. Yeah.
Are you concerned that Iran or its proxies would wage terror attacks against American targets abroad if you order military action?
We're always concerned about that, and we have to take them out and be very strong. You're even in danger talking to me right now. Do you know that? You are in danger talking to me right now. So I should probably get out of here. But you guys are actually
Iranians.
in danger. Can you believe it?
One more.
On sloped
Is it still your
roofs.
expectation that NATO countries spend 5% of their GDP on defense spending?
Well, I think they should do that. I don't think we should, but I think they should. We've been supporting NATO so long. In many cases, I believe paying almost 100% the cost. So I don't think we should, but I think that the NATO countries should, absolutely.
What, like Spain decides not to?
Well, NATO's going to have to deal with Spain. Spain's been a very low payer. They were always a very low payer. They were either good negotiators or they weren't doing the right thing. I mean, I think Spain has to pay what everybody else has to pay. Spain has been notorious for low pay. You know who else was a low payer, just about the lowest? A place called Canada. Because Canada said, why should we pay when the United States will protect us free? And they've been right about that.
ICE.
Ukraine, you've been making progress towards a peace deal, but I don't know if you know this, but Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo were there on the ground in Ukraine, seemingly doing the opposite, trying to provoke the Ukrainians to keep fighting. What do you think of that?
Well, we're going to see, and people have to be very careful with what they say. They got to be very careful with their mouth, because their mouth can get them into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, Lindsey, watch your mouth, punk.
ICE has said that they're trying to arrest up to 3,000 individuals a day. There are some communities that are saying they are fearful of being wrongfully detained or separating some families, even if they are undocumented. Is the fear in some of these communities worth the deportations of these undocumented individuals, a mass deportation program?
It's a tough subject because, look, we have farmers. I love farmers. I won 80%, 85% of the farmers, and I love them, and I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers. And you can also say the leisure business, etc. There are some businesses where you have a disproportionate amount of people that are the people that you're talking about. At the same time, we have to get the criminals out of our country, and we're looking at doing something where in the case of good, reputable farmers, they can take responsibility for the people that they hire and let them have responsibility, because we can't put the farms out of business. And at the same time, we don't want to hurt people that aren't criminals. Most of the people that came in over the last 3 years under Biden, I would say probably 3.5 to 4 years, those people, you have a lot of criminals, you have a lot of, I mean, we're looking at that very closely. You've had people that have worked on farms for 20 years. It's very hard to go in there and say, you know, you're coming out. But we're going to let the farmers take responsibility. They're great people. They'll do it. They know the good and the bad. So the hard part about this is not like a normal war where people wear uniforms. They don't wear uniforms.
That's true.
But we have murderers that came out of the last 4 years. We have murderers. We have drug lords. We have...
Yeah, and they're pretending to be farmers. Many of them.
People that we don't want to.
And the media calls them Maryland men and union workers and barbers and PhD people who are under attack.
We have prisoners. They emptied out Venezuela and many countries. They emptied out their prisons into the United States. We have to get those people out. But we have stone cold murders, 11,888 murders. We've already gotten a lot of them out of here, but we don't want them. So we have to be careful. But I never want to hurt our farmers. Our farmers are great people. They keep us happy and healthy and fat.
Are there other cities that you're going to try to replicate what you've done in Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, we had a big victory last night in the Court of Appeals with respect to Los Angeles, but really the country, where Gavin Newsom, who's really an incompetent governor.
Totally.
He's just doing a terrible job between his fires, between all the houses burning down, his forest fires, and now Los Angeles. If we didn't go to Los Angeles, and the sheriff admitted it, he had no control. He would have lost control. We saved Los Angeles by having the military go in. And the second night was much better. The third night was nothing much. And the fourth night, nobody bothered even coming. We put out that fire, and we did a great job of it. He sued us for going in and for helping him. We went and helped him. Right now, you'd have Los Angeles burning to the ground. Largely, it would have already been destroyed.
So do you think deportation
Mr.
should...
President, to be that of a peacemaker? Do you worry that striking Iran would change that?
Always a peacemaker. That doesn't mean sometimes you need some toughness to make peace, but always a peacemaker.
Can you win in Iran without ground forces?
Say it?
Is an aerial campaign in Iran enough, or do you need ground forces?
Well, I'm not going to talk about ground forces. The last thing you want to do is ground forces.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time. And I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
Mr. President, do you think deportation should focus on criminals or all people who are here illegally?
Should start focusing on criminals, and that's what we've been focused on. Very bad criminals, dangerous criminals.
But Stephen Miller said to go out and arrest every person who's here illegally. He's told ICE to arrest everyone who's here illegally. Do you agree with
Stephen
that?
and I have a very good understanding. He is a terrific person. We have a great understanding.
Mr. President, if there is an attack on U.S. assets, will you promise to conduct a full investigation and make it transparent with the American people before blaming Iran for such an attack?
Well, if there's an attack, we'll know almost immediately with modern equipment who made the attack.
Of course we will.
And those people will be very, very unhappy.
Prime Minister...
I want to get you people out of danger. You're in danger standing with me.
One more. Prime Minister Netanyahu said that they had the capacity to take out all of Iran's nuclear facilities. So what role would the U.S. be able to play, and why would they, if Israel says that they have all of the abilities, their own military?
I'm not sure he said that, but they really have a very limited capacity. They can break through a little section, but they can't go down very deep. They don't have that capacity, and we'll have to see what happens. Maybe it won't be necessary. Maybe it won't be necessary.
Would you like to see Congress pass a bill that bans child transgender surgeries?
Well, I know they're talking about it, aren't they? Huh? We're going to have to see how it comes to me in what form. Certainly, it's been something I've been talking about also. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Hey, Sean! Whoa! All right, that was real quick change there for us. All right, so that was Trump out there answering some questions, and I appreciate those questions. It sounds like Mehdi's still in the middle of trying to make his decision on what's going to be happening next with Israel and Iran. Like talking about peace. Didn't like that question about troops on the ground at all. And so this, it's kind of having a Soleimani vibe to it, but we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, the courts are doing everything they can to continue to import foreign problems into our land. Trump's trying to solve it. We'll be here continuing our coverage. We got one more update, my friends. And then it's time to hear from you. And here is what Trump said. A special prosecutor for the 2020 election? Sounds good to us. Here is what the president said, and we've got other activity saying we shouldn't just investigate 2020, which we know was fraudulent and stolen by multiple entities, including, sounds like the Chinese. We also have Abe Amadei, who's in Arizona, saying we should look at 2024 and 2022 because the same grift was continuing. And in Arizona, he sent a letter over to Pam Bondi, and we'll take a look at what was inside before we turn our attention to some reaction to what's happening out there. But the president, causing a lot of people to get excited on this one, says 0 border crossings for the month for Trump versus 60,000 for sleepy, crooked Joe Biden, a man who lost the 2020 presidential election by a landslide. Biden was grossly incompetent, and the 2020 election was a total fraud. The evidence is massive and overwhelming. A special prosecutor must be appointed. This cannot be allowed to happen again in the United States of America. Let the work begin. What this crooked man and his corrupt cronies have done to our country in 4 years is grossly indescribable. Make America great again. Thank you, Mr. President, for that. We concur. Now, we saw Abe Amadei is also asking Pam Bondi to look into some other things. He's a congressman in Arizona who fought hard, man, to get that seat. Says on Tuesday, he announced that he sent a letter to Pam Bondi requesting an investigation into credible claims that the election service provider breached protocols during the 2020 election. Runbeck Election Services. And remember, we talked about this when we covered the Kari Lake saga. A lot of it here. And we saw that Runbeck is this basically third-party company that the county just says, can you guys count this for us? And they process a bunch of crap in their private facilities and nobody can see inside because it's a private company. What? Yeah. So he made his request as part of a commitment to fix our elections. So in his letter to Pam, Amadei specifically requested an investigation into the handling of the ballots by several Western states utilizing Runbeck Election Services during 2024. He wrote to Bondi saying that there are credible reports indicating that boxes of printed blank ballots from several Western states were improperly mixed in a warehouse with returned voted mail ballots that were in the process of being prepared for tabulation. All right. We've already seen this in prior stories here, where even our Border Patrol caught 20,000 fake IDs that were being imported in Detroit. We covered another one on a members only stream, another 15,000 caught in Cincinnati. This morning, we're asking ourselves, okay, if there's 35,000 fake IDs that have been caught that are being sent over from China so that they can be utilized, they work with barcodes in Michigan, by the way. They scan the barcodes. It works, Michigan. Yeah, you're good. All of that is being caught. What percentage is not being caught? So you caught 35,000 that we know of. I'm sure there's many more. How much got through? And what were those used for? He says this alarming situation raises serious questions about the security and the integrity of the election process in Arizona and Maricopa County and beyond. The commingling of blank ballots with live ballots poses a significant risk to the accuracy and to the fairness of election results. And it is crucial that we have confidence in the integrity of our elections, and any potential mishandling must be investigated. And so, Abe is asking for the following. He wants to know about the circumstances surrounding the mixing of blank ballots with voted ballots in Runbeck warehouse, right? The mail-in ballots come in, they give them to some third-party company, like a DoorDash driver, and then they do the counting and they bring it back over to you. And you can't see what they did. The security measures in place to prevent those incidents, were those followed, and the impact on the accuracy of Arizona elections. Other relevant factors that may have compromised 2024. On Monday, FBI Kash Patel announced that they turned over a bunch of records to Chuck Grassley, including an intelligence report where China apparently produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to rig the mail-in ballots in favor of Joe. We have known for years that our election processes in Arizona are flawed and ripe with opportunities for failure, including like when Kari Lake, when she was voting the day of, the machines all just didn't work. Half of them didn't work. In very red locations around Arizona. We looked at the numbers here, remember? Looked at the counties. Oh, all the churches. Huge delays. Weird how that worked. So all of the day of votes had people with lines out the doors in Arizona, all on the same day. Weird. There appears to be a clear pattern in practice of security breakdowns, systems failures, and outright manipulation. Even Jenna Griswold over in Colorado posted the BIOS passwords on the internet. So we got to fix this. Amade pledged to Arizona's 8th district that he's going to take action, and we're excited to see that he is working on it. So that is out there. We also saw that Biden was out. So speaking of a rigged election, this is the dude that they said was our president, and he was out celebrating Juneteenth. And don't you miss, Joe?
Except me. I've been through all of Africa. I used to be there for a long, long time. Africa. I've been to the origins of where slavery started. And to listen to them talk about it now, how things have changed. We have to remember, our country is founded on the promise of freedom. Freedom for everybody. Not for everybody.
Yeah, even black people from Africa, says Joe. Thanks for your credible speech on Juneteenth. No, I'm being serious. Even black people, I swear. So here's another one.
For the United States of America. The United States of America.
Joe. Well, so he's having a tough time out there. They're still just giving him the mic, and he's just wandering around stages now. But here is a competent senior citizen named Chuck Grassley. And if, it's Friday night, you want to get out a blanket and a little pillow, that's allowed. It's now nap time with Chuck Grassley. But what he says here is very important, so I want to share a little bit of this with you.
Agency or, hundreds of thousands of employees in your agencies, you're at the top. You can't know what's going on at the bottom. And that you need to listen to whistleblowers. And they usually come forward with very important information. When they don't get that respect from the department heads, they usually end up coming to the Congress, and many of them come to the office of this senator. Just this year, to show you the importance of whistleblowers,
yes,
I made records public exposing the political origin of Arctic frost.
Yes.
Arctic frost is the case that ultimately became one of Jack Smith's cases against President Trump. Anti-Trump FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors started Arctic frost based on even more records that I've made public. Those very same anti-Trump FBI agents were involved in the investigation and prosecution of Peter Navarro, now serving with President Trump in the White House, like he did in the first Trump administration.
Yeah, when they attacked him and arrested
Those
him
agents
on Tarmac Airport.
That took on Peter Navarro were Assistant Special Agent in Charge Thibault and Special Agent Walter Giagardina. Whistleblowers have also disclosed to me that J.P. Cooney wanted to potentially open yet another case on Trump. J.P. Cooney was Jack Smith's deputy. Allegedly, Cooney wanted to use compulsory process to obtain more information. He improperly based that desire to do so in the large part on partisan news outlets.
Yeah, the corrupt fake news media. So shout out to Chuck Grassley for delivering that banger of a message there. We're grateful to our whistleblowers and to Chuck Grassley for exposing just how corrupt the FBI was. And we're looking forward to Cash and Dan cleaning house any day now. All right, my friends, what a beautiful day it has been. Happy Friday. If you're just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about. We had a Gavin Newsom update. He has had a tough time in being the governor of California and an honorable person. And he just got obliterated in two cases. One is an order from the Ninth Circuit. He struggled on this one, saying Trump did everything by the law. National Guard was properly deployed. Get your affairs in order. We also saw the Supreme Court came back down and said California's attempts to regulate fuel and the harms that are caused by that enables people to sue for those regulations. You can't just regulate things and pass laws and then have citizens or fuel companies in this case not have any recourse of action. The only time you can't sue is if they steal an election from you. Otherwise, if you're an illegal alien or some other company, then you're good. We talked about that. Then we heard Khalil was ordered released. We'll see if Trump reverses that or files an application to the Court of Appeals and whether they issue a stay or whether this dude gets released. Trump also answered a bunch of questions on Iran. I think that we're still in fog of war and we don't have any idea what he's going to do, but kind of sounds like there might be a bunker buster coming down the line. Trump also called for a special prosecutor. We got Abe Amadei, who is sending letters to Pam Bondi saying she should investigate a bunch of this stuff. The outsourcing of our elections to maybe fraudsters is a big problem. And Grassley is explaining why whistleblowers are so important. And so it has been a beautiful day, my friends, and a beautiful week. Thank you for hanging with us. I hope your Friday was also outstanding and enjoyable. Now it's time to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for supporting our work. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. If you haven't already done that, we go live on this channel weekdays at this time, and we'd love to have you come join us on the next one. And my friends, Donut, hey, and John, clipping for us today. You guys rock. Thank you for clipping for us and keeping things nice and orderly. Hey, what's going on here? Smile, because it's Friday. It is the weekend, and it's coffee time, baby. What a nice little smiley that is. This one from Lil Kim Jong-un said, it's kind of interesting that just one earthquake was detected in the exact same spot that houses a nuclear facility under the mountain. I wonder if they're blasting to dig deeper, or maybe perhaps something long and pointy came out of the sky and impacted the mountain. Yeah, that's wild. I saw there was an earthquake in Iran. What? Remember that one movie, I think Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson? So that they could send earthquakes and they came after him. Remind me of that. Hey, rub some dirt on it. Hey, Blood Moon. That's me. Says, may your quest for gym gear this weekend be fruitful. And when you're all set up for bicep day, leg day, shoulder and back day, don't forget the nights. We are all looking forward to the photos you can share from one of these two nighttime projects. Clear skies. This is ARP 286 Galaxy Group. Absolutely crazy. Look at those. Those are galaxies with like a million or billion stars in them. And Whirlpool Galaxy, aka Rub Some Dirt on it, is just snapping photos like it ain't nothing. Chubby, what's up? Yeah, Chubby says they do need to release Khalil, just like the judge ordered, right onto a flight out of the U.S. with no return ticket. Goodbye. Take your problems with you. Thank you for that, Chubby. Cardinal O'Flanagan, what's up? 5 months as a membo, says, hey, calling MAGA dumb to win worked good the last 2 times. Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. Yeah, and like everybody's trying to claim the mantle of MAGA. And like you have to believe a certain thing if you're MAGA. It's like you have to, or else you're not. Get out of here. Who are you? You're not telling us anything. So thank you for that. Hey, off label. Africa is blaming Trump for the AIDS? Because apparently we were paying full cost for them through USAID. They're blaming Trump for the AIDS. Well, that's not a surprise. Thank you. Off Label Podcast, right next door. Hey, Leonard, the genius of our founders is evident because Dems have made a determined effort to replace our republic with mob rule. Yeah, and they love democracy, because then they can execute tyranny of the majority. And they can just promise enough people all the things, and people are so dumb that they'll buy their promises and enable the evaporation of their own inherent power, divesting themselves of their humanity and handing it over to a government bureaucrat so they can do with it what they will. That's hot air. What's up? 13 months. I never missed a show. Tony from Prescott. What's up, Tony? Great to see you in Prescott, baby. We're neighbors. We should do a Prescott meetup sometime. I think we'll work on it. Thanks for saying what's up, Tony. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll do that at one point. I want to hang out. I want to meet all the Prescott people. Hey, this old guy, if there's any of them. There's one. There's one of you. Thank you. This old guy. The district court's claim that Newsom suffered irreparable injury was true. Politically, his claim that he was going to be in charge at noon was irreparable injury. Wait, that wasn't Trump causing that injury. That was the court causing the injury. It's all so confusing. Yeah, Gavin Newsom is responsible for, I think, probably a lot of his own injuries. I don't know, what kind of inhalants he's taken over the years or whatever, but probably a lot. Thank you, this old guy. FD Man says, Wussy Newsom got faced in court trying to rewrite laws in the U.S. Constitution through lawfare. What a little person he is. This old guy. All right, so the general of the National Guard is kind of like an auto pen. That's true. Yeah, Gavin just got auto penned by Trump. We're going to take your pen now, Gabby. Just sign right here. Thank you. This old guy, that's great. Hey, Don McGroarty. What's up, Don? 17 months as a member. Coming up on 2 full babies. Says, happy Friday, Robin Mods. And thanks for everything. Thank you, Don, for being here for 17 months. That's almost 2 full terms. That's a long time. We've been through some serious stuff together. And we're excited for the new baby. What's up, FD Man? They tried to pro-Palestine protest PPP in Egypt, and they got beat up and thrown out of Egypt. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like most sane countries, like only the West is like, we have to give everybody free speech for all of their problems too. What? Our Constitution isn't, we, the people for the entire world, in order to form a more perfect government for the Palestinian people. It's not in the analysis there. No, thank you. Off-Label Podcast says, Gabbard said the intelligence community says they aren't making them, but they have an abundance of materials that they would never need, right? Okay, well, they're not making them right now, but they could. And they have a lot of stuff that they need to make them. And unless they were going to make them, they wouldn't need that stuff. Kind of one of those things. Chubby says, the media isn't missing Tulsi's second part. They're deliberately ignoring it to fit their narrative and to try to cause a schism in the cabinet. Yeah, and I think both sides are doing it, right? Everybody's kind of, well, this is our truth and this is your truth, and you're only MAGA if you do this and you're only MAGA if you do that. We read some stupid article this morning about MAGA manipulation by some people who are, and have never been, as far as I can tell, MAGA at all. And so they're trying to like shoehorn this in, and actually it feels like the sides who are trying to claim the mantle of MAGA are the ones trying to do the dividing. Rick D, what is amazing about Newsom and Breyer is after Helene, Biden activated the National Guard from both North Carolina and Tennessee to deploy overseas, and not a single governor screamed about how he had no authority because he didn't ask first. So hit areas had no National Guard to help. Interesting, from Rick D. Yeah, well, this is to stop illegal aliens, so they have to object because this is their constituency. Jennifer, what's up, says for Rick Hot in the house. What's up, Rick? Thank you, Jennifer, for the dono on his behalf. We appreciate it. Leonard says his enemies often mock him and call him stupid, but the fact is, Trump is a genius. I agree with that. I think the people who underestimated him all really found out pretty badly, didn't they? They all thought they were so smart. We're going to insurrection, throw them off the thing. They had a whole plan. They had a whole, government operation, pipe bombers, FBI cover-up, Stephen D'Antonio. No, the data's corrupted. The whole thing is fake. Trump still beat him. All of them. Whole operation of government to stop him. Maybe even a whole foreign nation to stop him. Like all of China. All those geniuses over there tried to stop Trump. He won. Hey, Doan. Rwanda and the DRC agreed to a ceasefire, and Rubio is working out a minerals deal for the U.S., which bites Beijing on its economically bruised booty. From Doan. Man, the Chinese CCP is going to have some chapped booties over there. Pineapple Water. Every time the IRGC sign an agreement, they continue to enrich uranium hidden from the IAEA when they inspect. The West is so very uneducated about the Middle East. Persian people are thanking Israel. I think that's probably true. Yeah, the West is, I think, largely uneducated about that. And I don't know why we need to spend a lot of time being educated about it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's like if America is thinking about America first, I don't really need to know the ins and outs of the historical struggle between these two regions for the last 5,000 years. In other words, like I'd rather more people be educated about the American Constitution and what the First Amendment means and what the Second Amendment means and all those things. But your point is well taken. Now, a lot of people, including myself, will still comment on these things, even though, it's not our maybe domain of expertise because we're American citizens and we're trying to parse through these things together. But it is a complicated issue. And anytime I think anybody comes out with an unequivocal answer and they say, you can't ask questions and you have to do what we say, that's when we start to have problems with it. Or you can't talk about these things because of what's happening. Milo phone bill. Why can't farmers use the existing temporary agriculture worker visas? H-2A from Milo phone bill? Great question. G-Men says, sounds like Rob finally admitted that Marbury versus Madison was illegal. LOL. From G-Men. I think I was talking about Scalia and what he said, but it's an interesting conversation for sure. Chat with me. Some liberal is going to clip that section where Trump says, you're in danger standing with me. And blast. Trump is threatening the press. He was wishing it upon them. Stochastic terrorism. Doan, what's up, Doan, says Runbeck and Dominion are two ticking legal time bombs. Yeah, and it's like they spent the last 4 years essentially trying to sue and paper over what they did. And now they're having to face some disclosures that might be very problematic for them. What's up, Doan? Says remote access of Dominion voting machines sucks from Doan. Shout out to Doan. She's going to be sued for $1 billion for that super chat. King of Biltong is here. You know where to get him. Thank you for the super chat, King of Biltong, and for plugging BiltongUSA.com. And he created a code for us over there, Robert, at 10% off for all the good Biltong you can have. FD Man says, look at the guy behind Biden. He looks so sad for Joey. He looks like he's looking at his grandpa talking babble. That guy's face tells the truth about Biden's mind functionally. Everybody's just like, he'll wear himself out. Just put him up there for 5 minutes. Just take the dog out, let him run around, it'll be fine. Knox, hey, thank God it's Friday, all. Biden is getting treatment here in Houston. Is that right? Galveston should have said no and just said, man, you're just done. It's enough. It's terminal. Call it. We wish Biden a speedy recovery. We hope he takes, he does well. But we'll see what happens. Says he looks bad. He is looking rough. Hey, Jennifer, please send this to the GOP from Rick H. You want me to forward a political donation for Rick H? I don't think we can accommodate that one, but thank you for that, Jennifer. Lil Kim Jong-un says, breaking news out of the talks in Europe today. France has surrendered in the Iranian-Israeli conflict. From Lil Kim Jong-un. They already surrendered. The French did. Like, we give up. This is too much for us. We're like, you're not even doing anything. We're up. We're giving up. Hey, I have an archaeologist friend who escaped from Israel at the beginning of the war, but has some still on the excavation team that is trapped. He's asking for prayers for those left behind trying to get out. Courtesy of Chat with Me. Knox says, we gave Iran their centrifuges and trained their scientists at MIT in the 1950s when the Shah was the ruler. Yeah, we set up a lot of these things until they're not useful and they fall, and then we have to go back, and it's a big problem. Like, we were kind of like friends with bin Laden until we weren't, kind of thing. Hey, doggone it. Says Jaws just turned 30, 50. I said it makes everyone feel old. Wow, Jaws turns 50. Wasn't that like Steven Spielberg thing? What was that? Yeah, that can't be right. Oh my gosh. I'm about to be 40. Came out 10 years before I was born. Oh my goodness. It's amazing. Better every year. No problem at all. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for sending those in. Really appreciate your donos and your support and your friendship and love. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't already done so. Members, stick around. We're going to go over to the members only after party. So YouTube members, hit refresh in a few seconds, minutes. Locals, friends, stick around and nothing will change for you. It'll go dark for a second, but we'll be back, so hang tight. And we'll leave it there. My friends, it has been a beautiful, beautiful week. I want to thank all the mods and meme smiths who mod the fort down for us and keep things nice and orderly here as we attend to business. Our friends, Carrie B, K-Bean, John, we got Donut in the house, mod the fort down for us, clipping for us. We appreciate them. Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger on the Rumbles, G-Gum, Just Rhonda, and Elliot, making things beautiful and orderly around here. My friends, it's been an incredible week. Thanks for hanging with us and for caring about these issues and our country. We do appreciate you. But we will pause here for the weekend. Members, stick around. Of course, until we're back here on Monday, I hope you're doing something fun this weekend. I hope you're doing something exciting, spending time with family, friends, the people that we love, getting outside, staying cool, getting some sunshine, and restoring, rejuvenating, and rehabilitating those bodies, spirits, and souls, because we're coming back on Monday. And we're going to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends, and an amazing weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through